to another episode of Builds by Bailey. Today is part 4 of rebuilding the axle on the Corolla. So let's go ahead and get started on sanding down all the rust and the leftover paint that is on the rear axle housing, so we can get that in paint and we can start putting the axle shafts back together. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take our little die grinder here. We're going to change the end out from a green roll-lock because we don't really want to grind anything away. We're just trying to take the rust off of it. So we're going to take that off, and then we're going to, I've got these little like Scotch-Brite pad kind of ones. You can get these at O'Reilly's. They're the Master Pro coarse ones. So there's 10 of them in a pack. I think they're like $14. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna attack the axle and get all of the rust and stuff off of it. Now there are gonna be some hard to reach places that we can't really get this down into. So with that, I've got a handheld sandblaster. We're going to try and hit some of those areas with that. But we're gonna try and get the most of it off with the grinder and such. So you get the idea. This is what we're doing to it. I'm not gonna bore you guys with like 3 long hours of me sanding this thing down. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish the rest of it off and we'll meet back when it's done. So I have the axle all sanded down, as you can tell, and I've got it wiped off. I decided not to sandblast inside little cavities. I'm gonna let the self-etch primer and the flat black that I'm gonna put on it, they've both got things to protect it in it, so the rest isn't going to grow fast, or whichever. So, and it's only down inside like the cavities where the suspension arms and stuff actually attach to it. So, not too terribly worried. I got down in there with a wire brush and scraped out all the scale and all that stuff, so it's pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead, and it's already been wiped down, so we're going to go ahead and start spraying this thing black. We're going to put 1 coat of the self-etch primer on it first, just like we did on those other parts. So went over it 2 real quick times, got pretty good coverage on all of it. There's a couple of spots that look thin, but I think that'll be okay because I'm getting ready to put that other really good paint on top of it. So we'll let this dry for a second and then we'll start spraying it black. Okay, so now we've let that dry for about 15 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start putting the black on. So I got 2 pretty good wet coats on the axle in black, so I'm gonna leave it here for today. We'll pick back up when I get back home from work tomorrow. going to start reassembling the axle. Well, it's the next day. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start putting the axles back together. So we're going to put the bearings onto the axle shafts and the plates and all that stuff that's supposed to go on, and get those ready to be put back into the axle. Kind of give the axle a little bit more time to cure before I actually start putting stuff back together on it. Okay, so I have my axle. This is the one for the passenger side. The way that I figured that out, because I forgot, is if you look, you can see little rings, like a spiral ring that runs around the axle. On the actual housing, it has rings on one side and it's smooth on the other. The same way with the flanges on these axles. One of them is smooth, the other one has these rings on it. Well, the ring one is on the passenger side. So I've got the little flange that we sandblasted. It's got an R on it, so that's the one for the right side, which means passenger. So I've got that on first. You can see the dimple goes up, so we'll have that on there. And then I'm going to put the bearing on, press that into place, and then I'm going to put that little spacer piece, I'm going to put that on and press that into place. I'm going to apply a little bit of lubrication, some grease onto those pieces so they slide easy, because this stuff is kind of, it's dry, so it's just going to grab a hold of it. So we're going to do that real quick. Probably won't pause in between each one of them, but I'll show you putting both of them on. So you can see I've got the bearing at the bottom. I've got the plate above it. You can see I've got grease on the shaft section that the bearing's going to slide onto. And then I've got that centered on that plate with the pieces stacked on top of it to take up space. So I'm going to go ahead and start pushing this on. Now we'll have to stop briefly, readjust the bottom piece that's spreading against it because there is a step, and then I will continue on pushing it the rest of the way. There's a round side and a flat side. Flat side goes towards the bearing. The round side sticks towards the center of the diff. And there you have it. There it is, all put together. I've got the bracket that keeps the axle in, the bearing, and then the little collar that goes on that. This is actually where the seal is at for the diff fluid from coming in. So you make sure that that's all nice and clean and stuff, so that makes the proper seal. But that's all seated in place like it's supposed to be, and this side's ready to go back together. So the last thing I might do is put the wheel studs in. But I might wait until it's all together and put them in when they're on the car. It might be a little bit easier. So see, this one is smooth. There's no rings in it like the other one had that was spiraling around it. So yeah, that's how I can tell the difference. And then on the axle housing itself, it's smooth on that one side, where the other one has rings that go around it. So this is the right one for that side. So I've got, if you didn't know, the other one had an R on it for right. This one doesn't have anything on it, so that's a left. Both of them are put together now. I got the spacers and the bearings and the flanges put all on there. So I might hit these with a coat of paint real quick, but I don't have to show you guys that. You're probably tired of watching me paint stuff. So the next step you'll see is me putting the seals in the axle itself. Okay, so I've got my new wheel seals, outer wheel seals for the axle. So these will keep the diff fluid from coming out. I've got an 1 7/16 socket, but I feel like I could go a little bit larger if I had one. And we're going to put that over the outside to help drive it straight. And I've got a soft rubber mallet because you don't want to like curl these things in or tap them in with a hammer and a screwdriver or anything. You want it all to be even. So first things first, I'm going to take and I'm going to wipe out the inside of the center housing and on the outsides where the seals go with a little bit of brake cleaner on a rag. I don't want to spray it because I just painted this thing yesterday, but just wipe it off where everything's going to touch and it'll be good to go. I got that all in there. I'm gonna go ahead, and there's a little burr on the inside there. I got one on the other side too, but it's way worse. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna smooth that down a little bit first on the other side and put the new seal in. This one moved over it fine, so it shouldn't leak. Okay, now I have those wheel seals in. I actually messed one up, so I had to go to the auto parts store and get another one. It cost me $8 to mess one up. So I've got both those in. I also cleaned the surface on the axle where the diff goes into, and I cleaned the surface of the diff and got all of the old gasket and all the silicone and stuff that was on there. I got all that stuff off. So now we're going to go ahead and put new RTV on the new gasket, put it onto the axle, and then put RTV on the other side of the gasket, and then put the diff in place and get it tightened down. So we're going to do that real quick and then see what else we can do. So I got the new gasket. It's just a little thin piece of gasket paper. So we're going to put sealant on both sides of this. So first we're going to put it onto the housing. Well, we got a problem. This is the wrong gasket. It doesn't, it's not the same diameter. Huh. Well, oh well, I guess we're just gonna RTV all of it. Now when working with RTV, you want to make sure you just snug the pieces up. Don't actually tighten them down all the way because you want that RTV to firm up, so then whenever you squish it the rest of the way, it makes a really good seal. So I'm just going to finger tighten these real quick. We're going to change out the pinion seal real quick because it's bad, and then we'll put all that back together. And then we'll tighten those down. Okay, put the new pinion seal on there. I'm going to go ahead and put the drive shaft mating surface back on there and then zip that down with an impact so I can set the preload on that, and then we'll have this portion of it done. Then we'll go back to the nuts on that, on the actual diff itself, and we'll tighten those down. Okay, we have the nut back put on the top there, and we centered up the little punch part right where it was supposed to be on that one side. There we go. So we centered that back up and we put the new mark back in it to keep it locked in place. So this section of the diff housing is all ready to go back into the car. We'll probably do that tomorrow. Oh yeah, well, let's go ahead and tighten down those bolts real quick on the actual chunk itself. Make sure you do this in a crisscross pattern like you would the lug nuts on your car. That way it evenly distributes the RTV underneath it. Just going to go around and do till it's solid, and then like 1/8 of a turn. And that should be plenty enough torque to hold this in place and keep it from leaking. Okay, everything seems to be pretty good. That's gonna probably do it for this section of the axle. That's gonna do it for this episode of Builds by Bailey. Thanks for watching me put the axle back together. The housing's all the way done. All we gotta do is put it underneath the car now and put the axle shafts in each side, and then we can start putting that disc brake conversion on. So that'll be the next video. Hopefully I get to do that tomorrow. If not, we'll do that on Sunday. So once again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends.